The Wine project dropped development release 10.16 on October 4th, 2025. And guys, this one's significant. We're talking about a feature that developers and gamers have been waiting years for, plus meaningful improvements to compatibility and graphics support. Let's break down what's new. First and foremost, for those just getting started, Wine stands for Wine is not an emulator. It's a compatibility layer that lets you run Windows applications on Linux, Mac OS, and other Unix-like systems. Think of it as a translator between Windows programs and your operating system. Version 10.16 is a development release, meaning it's testing ground for features heading into Wine 11.0, which launches in January 2026. The headline feature is NTSync support. This deserves your attention because it directly impacts performance. Here's the problem Wine has always faced. Windows applications constantly communicate with the operating system through something called synchronization primitives. These are basic operations like locks, semaphores, and events that programs use to coordinate tasks. Wine had to translate these Windows calls into Linux equivalents, and that translation created overhead. Every synchronization call meant a round trip that slowed things down. NTSync changes this. It's a Linux kernel driver that implements Windows synchronization primitives natively in the kernel. Instead of translating back and forth, Wine can now talk directly to the kernel using Windows-style synchronization. The result? Faster performance, especially in applications that do heavy multi-threading. This requires Linux kernel 6.14 or newer, which was released in January 2025. If you're running kernel 6.14 or later, Wine 10.16 automatically detects and uses NT-Sync without any configuration. For gaming, this means better frame rates and reduced stuttering. For professional applications, it means smoother performance under load. Wine 10.16 adds support for 16-bit applications in the new WOW64 mode. WOW64 stands for Windows 32-bit on Windows 64-bit. It's the compatibility layer that lets 32-bit programs run on 64-bit systems. Wine's implementation now extends this to 16-bit applications, which are programs from Windows 3.1 and early Windows 95 era. Why does this matter? Legacy software. Industrial control systems, old scientific applications, vintage games. These programs still have users, and until now, running them on modern 64-bit Linux systems required complicated workarounds. Wine 10.16 makes it straightforward. This is niche, but for people who need it, it's essential. Wine 10.16 introduces initial support for D3D KMT objects. D3D KMT is the direct 3D kernel mode thunk layer. It's the interface between user mode graphics drivers and the Windows kernel. In practical terms, this improves compatibility with modern Windows graphics applications. Games and professional software that rely on direct 3D's kernel mode interfaces will work better. This is foundational work. The implementation is initial, meaning it's not complete yet, but it's a progress toward full graph stack compatibility. Pair this with wine-staging 10.16's updates to VKD 3D latest, which translates direct 3D 12 to Vulkan, and you're looking at measurable improvements in graphics-intensive applications. Wine now generates and installs WinMD files. These are Windows metadata files used by the Windows runtime, Microsoft's application platform introduced with Windows 8. WinRT powers modern Windows apps, especially those from the Microsoft Store. By supporting WinMD files, Wine improves compatibility with newer Windows applications that use this runtime. Again, this is foundational. Most users won't directly interact with the WinMD files, but applications that depend on them will now function correctly under Wine. Wine 10.16 fixes 34 bugs across nearly 400 total changes. Specific games that benefit include Wolfenstein, The Old Blood, Grand Theft Auto Vice City, Star Wars Jedi Knight, Dark Forces 2, and Colin McRae Rally 2. These fixes address crashes, rendering issues, and compatibility problems that prevented these games from running properly. Beyond games, the bug fixes touch core Wine functionality, improving stability across the board. Development releases accumulate these fixes on the path to a stable release, so each one makes Wine more reliable. Wine Staging 10.16 released alongside the main version. Staging is where experimental patches live before they are merged into main Wine. This release rebases the code against Wine 10.16, removes outdated patches that are no longer relevant, and adds a new patch set called D3DX9 set raw value. It also updates graphics support with latest VKD3D and D3DX11_43 patches. If you run Wine Staging, you get these experimental features early. The trade-off is less stability, but for testing and development, it's valuable. Wine 10.16 is available now from winehq.org. Source code is really for download and binary packages are rolling out through distribution repositories. This release sets the stage for Win 11.0. The code freeze happens in early December and the stable release scheduled for January 2026. If you're testing applications or games under Wine, now's the time to try 10.16 and report issues. NTSync support is the game changer here. Faster synchronization means better performance across the board, combined with improved graphics support and legacy applications compatibility. Wine continues closing the gap between Windows and Linux. That's Wine 10.16. Links to download and documentation are in the description box below. I'm your host from Atarian News Channel, and before you leave, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. I'll see you again in the next video.